千里之行，始于足下. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. Now, chapter 64, as I mentioned previously, is the iconic chapter of the Tao Te Ching. It is where we get the line about a journey of 1,000 miles. And the Chinese name for this particular chapter, once again, it's in 3 characters. So let me break them down for you. The first character to the left means to assist, to amplify. And the character in the middle, this should be a familiar character. We previously have talked a lot about one wu, where one means 10,000, which is extrapolated to mean a lot, many, all. And then wu, the same character in the middle, means things. So things can take on different contexts depending on what you're talking about. It can mean living things, which includes human beings. It can also mean all things. So that would include things that are organic and also non-organic. It can be things like living creatures, but also the environments in which they inhabit. So then when you put all this together, the last character on the right is the same character as before. It means chapter. So when you string them together, it's the chapter about assistance to all things, help to all things. And having studied 63, the previous chapter, when we get into this one, you're going to be able to recognize the continuing train of thought. Here in 64, Lao Tzu is going to continue what he talked about before. He's going to talk about acting early when things are still small in the beginning. And then we will, of course, also explore the iconic line about the journey of 1,000 miles. So here's what 64 looks like. As usual, let's go ahead and read it from beginning to end. Tao Te Ching, chapter 64. When it is peaceful, it is easy to maintain. When it shows no signs, it is easy to plan. When it is fragile, it is easy to break. When it is small, it is easy to scatter. Act on it when it has not yet begun. Treat it when it is not yet chaotic. A tree thick enough to embrace grows from tiny sapling. A tower of 9 levels starts from the dirt heap. A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. The one who meddles will fail. The one who grasps will lose. Therefore, sages do not meddle and thus do not fail. Do not grasp and thus do not lose. People in handling affairs often come close to completion and fail. If they are as careful in the beginning as in the end as the beginning, then they will have no failure. Therefore, sages desire not to desire and do not value goods that are hard to acquire. They learn to unlearn and redeem the fault of the people to assist the nature of all things without daring to meddle. That's chapter 64, and I want to point everyone's attention to the next to last line, to line 26, where it's talking about assisting the nature of all things. This is where we get the chapter title, to basically help or assist all things. Now we want to take a look at the lines, at the characters in the lines, to see if there are repeating patterns that we can spot. And let's begin, as usual, from the top, from line 1. And right off the bat, I think it's very easy to see that you can already tell the first character of the first 4 lines is exactly the same character. Here they are, exactly the same. Then, that's not all. We also see the same character being repeated across the 4 lines, and it's the next to last character in each line. So for lines 1, 3, and 4, it's the 3rd character, and then for line 2, it's the 4th. Let's go ahead and highlight those. And then I've got the correspondence between the English words and the Chinese characters, so you can see for yourself. You can see it, and you can see easy, and easy maps to this character here, which is E. And that's a simple way to remember this character. It's the first part of the English word easy, E. Then, I think, we have there's a temptation now to right off the bat identify the first 4 lines as the first section. But as usual, we always need to get the sense of what this is talking about to see if Lao Tzu is done commenting on a particular thought. Well, let me point out that from line 7 onward, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, these are all metaphors in a very poetic structure. It's talking about a tree, a tower, and then a journey. So that's definitely talking about something different than the beginning part, where it's talking about how when things at the beginning are easy to maintain, easy to plan, easy to break apart, to scatter, etc. So that's a very different thought. So what about lines 5 and 6? Act on it when it has not yet begun, treat it when it is not yet chaotic. Okay, that's actually continuing the same line of thought as the first 4 lines. It's all basically talking about how do we handle things in life. And indeed, lines 5 and 6 have their own repeating characters, as you can see there. There's the act on it when it has not yet begun. So those are the English words that repeat from line to line. Same with the Chinese characters. So now we have a good dividing line for section 1. So that's how we can tell. Then we have the iconic section from 7 all the way down to see that we can see a repeating poetic structure there as well. You can tell 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They've got repeating characters in an A-B progression. Whereas 7, 9, and 11 will be the A, and then 8, 10, 12 will be B. Those repeat among themselves. And then you can see the corresponding characters on the right-hand side. So this is good. We can identify these as a section on its own. So what about after this? It's starting to talk about something else. The one who meddles will fail, the one who grasps will lose. Well, this is certainly a poetic construction with repeating characters. Then we also have more repetition down below in 16 and 17. It's the same character, really, if you look at it. 2 repeating characters within the line, 4 altogether in 16 and 17. We have to work harder in this chapter to identify the sections just because there are so many more lines than usual. It's got 27 lines. All right, so there's even a little bit more to that. Now, I think just looking at this and then seeing the lack of repetition down below, it is tempting to put a line between 17 and 18 and say, well, from 13 to 17, we've got section number 3. This is where I want to point out a repetition that is not as obvious. So look at this character in line 13. This is the character for fail. And then note that down below, it's got the same character in line 21. And again, it's also talking about fail. In this case, it's a noun. So the noun for fail is failure. So when we look at this and when we look at the sense that it makes, it starts out talking about those who meddle, those who grasp, those who are attached, those who can't let go of their attachments. Then it continues on to talk about how people usually fail before completing something. And therefore, if they are not careless, if they are as careful in the end, they wouldn't have that. So this is still on the same theme of failing at something so that we can learn from the failures. So it turns out that this is one section. It's one section on its own before we get to the conclusion. The conclusion emphasizes what the sages do. The sages learn from the failures of the people, from their observation of life, and therefore they are a particular way. They desire not to desire, they learn to unlearn, etc. And we can see that as the last repeating element in the last part. So it's more difficult to see because it's not in the same position, but the expression is similar. To desire and not to desire, they want to moderate or manage their desires. They learn to unlearn. They learn that they should unlearn or let go of some concepts that no longer serve them. So this is what the sages do, and it is the conclusion of 64. Wow, stepping back to look at this whole chapter, we can definitely see there's quite a bit of complexity. There's the length, there's the amount of text. It's forcing its way to the top of the slide, leaving no room, for the title of the slide. This is how we still maintain legibility of all the text. But now we can break it down into smaller parts so that we can explore line by line. And I think we still have time to be able to talk about a few of these lines before we need to break for the summary section. So remember, we're building up the foundation now for us to get to the teaching in this chapter, the value, of what we can apply to life. So let's go ahead and start at the beginning. I think the best way to get our discussion going is by focusing on the first 4 lines. The first 4 lines have a similar poetic structure, so let's isolate them and talk about what they mean. Okay, so take a look at the 4 lines. I want to first focus on the character that's repeating itself in the 4 lines that we pointed out before when we did the analysis. E. The primary meaning, especially in this context, is easy or simple. So this is the same meaning in ancient times as it is in modern times. In modern Mandarin, you would say 容易 to express simple. How difficult is something? Well, it's not difficult. It is 容易. It is easy or simple. That's the primary meaning. Now, it so happens that there is another meaning that is not, the two meanings don't mix, they are separate. There's another meaning that is significant in the Tao. The secondary meaning is change. So when you look at these two characters, 易经, that's what a lot of people call 易经. Well, it's actually 易经. And spelling it like 易经, or sometimes people say 爱情, that's all due to the old method of romanization. In that method, there's a lot of notation about how I by itself in that system is supposed to sound like E. And then CHING in that system is supposed to sound like JING. But then none of that has gotten out of academia, so people don't know. They just assume I Ching because that's what it looks like. In reality, it is Yi Jing, and what is that? That's the book of changes. That is, most people know it as Yi Jing, and that's where you catch the coins and read up on it, and it seems amazingly accurate. Well, it's the very first book about the Tao. It's the book of changes. It predates the Tao Te Ching by more than 2,000 years. So in this context, it only means the former and not the latter. Here in this chapter, it just means easy. So I don't want people to make the same mistake that many authors and many academics and many experts, quote unquote, make, and that is to conflate the meaning together. They might say, oh, well, you see, it's got two different meanings. It's got easy and then it's got change. It just basically means that in the Tao, changes are easy. No, the Tao doesn't say that at all. These characters are contextual. They're used in different ways and they mean different things. The two meanings do not mix up together. So generally speaking, what this is saying in this particular place at the beginning of this chapter is that everything is easier in the beginning. And then let's continue on with this discussion. Let's focus on the first line. First line says, when it is peaceful, it is easy to maintain. So I want to talk about what that means. And I especially want to talk about how this line can be easily understood when you think about the opposite. The easiest way to understand this line is through its opposite. What do I mean by that? Well, think of it this way. When things are chaotic, when a situation is chaotic, it becomes difficult to restore peace. That makes intuitive sense. We've all seen that. We've all seen how messy or confusing things can get when they're chaotic, and it is very difficult to bring things back under control. So that's exactly what this is saying. When it is chaotic, it becomes difficult to restore peace. So to use an example, let's think about in modern times when you have crowds that are gathering together in one place. Perhaps it is for a demonstration, perhaps it is for a protest. Regardless, law enforcement has the duty to maintain control over that situation. And when they exercise that control, they are dependent on people being law-abiding citizens. They want to make sure that people there have peaceful intentions. That is, they're not there to cause problems, to cause trouble. When that is the case, it is easy to maintain the peace, obviously. Then, that's why we have this, I have this bullet point here. Peaceful gathering can easily remain peaceful as long as everyone is having those peaceful intentions. But what if that's not the case? What if things get out of hand, get out of control? Well, the crowd becomes a mob. Mob violence can erupt and quickly escalate beyond control. So now you see the sense. Lao Tzu is trying to say both, but he's picking and choosing one side of it to talk about situations in general. When it is peaceful, it is easy to maintain, even when you only have a handful of law enforcement officers and you have a huge crowd. They can still maintain control. On the other hand, when it gets chaotic, well, it's possible that law enforcement can be vastly outnumbered by the mob, in which case it's up in the air. All bets are off. You don't know what's going to happen next. There's going to be violence. There's going to be damage. There's going to be a lot of negative stuff happening, and it's going to make the news. So this is the easiest way to understand that. So I want to at least give us a sense of what this chapter is leading off with. It's talking about things in the beginning, when things are still easy to control, easy to do something about it. Now, looking at the clock, we are now getting close to the top of the hour. So that means we have to get ourselves to the summary page. I'm glad we talked about the first line. It's going to make the beginning parts of the summary make more sense. We've talked about one line, and we see that it's addressing these problems that we have to resolve. Problems in life. Take care of problems. So we can do like a quick preview of what we'll talk about next time. How do we take care of problems? Well, ideally, we want to do it before the problems actually begin. Anticipate issues. Set up preventive measures so those problems never come up in the first place. So less ideal, but still good, is to take care of problems as early as possible, immediately upon detection or discovery. We'll talk about this more next time. And some people say, well, before the problem show a sign, when it is only existing as a potential, and some will say at the first sign of manifestation, then you want to address that issue. But either way, we're talking about as early as possible in the course of a problem. And then lastly, the third one, not ideal, but better late than never, is before the problems get chaotic. The more chaos there is in your life, the more difficult it's going to be to resolve the various problems and issues. And it can be an uphill battle to get over an issue that has become chaotic. And that's why in retrospect, hindsight is always 20/20. That's when you think to yourself that, well, I should have taken care of this before it became such a big issue. So this is what we're going to talk about next time, the progression that we see here. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.